In this video, we will be covering ballpark measurement. And when we talk about ballpark, that means an estimated measurement. We're going to be looking at how the metric system compares to the customary system. So I'm on the front page of your notes packet. And I want to fill in, we are going to give you this chart on any assessment that you take, but you should work on trying to memorize these because when you take your SOL, in the spring, you're not going to be given these measurements. So make sure you try your best to get these memorized so that you're not having to constantly refer back to the front page. So 1 inch is about 2.5 centimeters in the metric system. 1 meter is about 1 yard. 1 ounce is about 28 grams. 1.5 kilometers is about 1 mile. 1 kilogram is about 2 pounds. 1 liter is about 1 quart. Water freezes at 0 degrees Celsius and 32 degrees Fahrenheit. The way I remember that 32 is it has to be 32 degrees outside in order for us to have the chance of getting snow. Water boils at 100 degrees Celsius and at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Normal body temperature is 37 degrees Celsius or 98 degrees Fahrenheit. Room temperature is about 20 degrees Celsius or 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So those, we will give them to you on any assessment that you take, but remember on your SOL in the spring, they will not give you those measurements. So we are going to be using ratios and proportions in order to figure out how to compare between the customary system, which we use in the United States, and the metric system, which is used all over all the other countries in the world. So we're going to use proportions. And this is actually something that you'll learn in 7th grade, but we start teaching it to you now as it relates to measurement. So proportions are used to find equivalent ratios. And equivalent ratios are just equal ratios. Just like we did ratios at the beginning of the year and we had to simplify them down, they still meant the same thing, but we had to make them smaller. It's the same thing here. We're just going to change what the ratio looks like in order for it to match what we're trying to get to. So here's an example of some equivalent ratios. So it says 5 dogs to 3 cats, and how would I get from 5 dogs to 15 dogs? Well, I can multiply this by 3 because 5 times 3 is 15, and I can do 3 times 3 would be 9 cats. It's almost like simplifying, but the opposite. So instead of dividing to make it smaller, sometimes you might multiply to make it bigger. So I have sodas compared to water. So I know both waters, so how would I get from 7 waters to 28 waters? Well, I'm going to multiply by 4. If I multiply by 4 on the bottom, I have to multiply by 4 on the top. 4 times 4 is 16 sodas. So the ratio is now 16 to 28. And then the same thing for this one. I'm comparing pencils to pens. Pencils are on the top, pens are on the bottom. 3 to get to 33 pencils would be times 11 to go forward. But if you look at the ratio, I'm actually going backwards. So I need to do the division of 11 because times 11 would be go forward. So 22 divided by 11 would be 2 pens. All right, so that's how you would do it with your ratios. Now there's another way to do it, which I said before. So this is what we did first. That was what we did up here. The cross multiply and identify the missing number, that's what we're going to do down here. And here's an example of how you cross multiply. And like I said, the cross multiplying is a 7th grade skill, but some of you might be really good at it because you like the butterfly method when you're comparing fractions. So how do we cross multiply? Well, just like the butterfly method, I like to start with the x piece. So 2.5 times x. Well, I can't multiply that, so I'm just going to write 2.5x. There's an equal sign here, so I have to leave the equal sign. And if you want to, draw the line like you would for the equations. 1 times 27.5 is 27.5. Now, I need to solve this to get x by itself because x is the missing measurement. So I'm going to divide, because these are stuck together by multiplication. I have to do the inverse, which is division. And if I divide, these are opposites, so they're going to cancel. I'm left with x equals 27.5 divided by 2.5 is 11. And when I'm looking at the measurement, I'm missing the inches piece. So this is 11 inches would be my final answer. For the next one, same thing. I'm going to use the butterfly method. I'm going to start with the x piece first. So I have 1 times x is just going to be 1x equals, and if I multiply the other way, sorry, I should have circled the other way here. 3 times 16.5 is going to be 49.5. Now, if you remember from our previous units, x, when you write it as 1x, is just x. So x equals 49.5, and our units, if we look across, are feet. So this is going to be feet. And that's the answer that would have gone on the line. All right, so now we have to figure out how do we set up our own proportions because they're not going to be given to us. So we have to look to see what we're comparing. So it says how many inches are in a foot? Well, we're comparing inches to feet. So I'm going to put inches over feet. And then I'm going to look back at what I know about inches and feet. I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong page. What do I know about inches and feet? And if I look, oh, it's not on here because these are only the customary measurements. My mistake. But if you remember, there is 12 inches in 1 foot. And it's saying here we are given 5 feet. So we're going to plug in the 5 where the feet are, and all the feet are on the bottom. I'm going to put x here. So I'm going to multiply the x first. Use a different color. X times 1 is just x, 1x, equals, and if I multiply the other way, 12 times 5 is going to be 60. So there are 60 inches in 1 foot. Now, if you liked the ratio method, you could have seen 12 over 1 equals x over 5. You could have said, okay, well, 1 times 5 is 5. 12 times 5 would be 60 to be the x. So you would have gotten the same answer. How many quarts are in a gallon? Well, if you remember Gallon Man from elementary school, or I'm sorry, Gallon Golf, there are 4 quarts in a gallon. So we are comparing quarts to gallons, and there are 4 quarts in 1 gallon. And if we look down here, we want to try to figure out how many gallons are 12 quarts. So we're going to put 12 quarts here. X goes there because we don't know that part. And I'm going to use the cross multiplying method. So I'm going to do 12, oops, sorry, I should start with the x first. 4 times x would be 4x. And it doesn't matter what you start with. I just like to put the x always on the left-hand side. And then I'm going to do 12 times 1. 12 times 1 is 12. To solve this, I have to divide by 4. So I'm left with x equals 3. So there's 3 gallons that make 12 quarts. Now, if you wanted to, you could figure out 4 times 3 is 12, and 1 times 3 is 3, so then you get 3, and you don't have to go through any of this math. Your choice, whatever you feel more comfortable doing. How many centimeters are in a meter? Well, if you think back to your time in elementary school, there are 100 centimeters is 1 meter. Metric system is based on 100s. So we are comparing centimeters to meters. Always write out what are you comparing. That way you don't make a mistake. Because remember, you have to put quarts on the top, gallons on the bottom, inches on the top, feet on the bottom. If you don't put them in the right spots, they're not going to mean the same thing. So we have 100 centimeters is 1 meter. And from our problem then, we're given 450 centimeters. So I'm going to put that up here with the centimeters. Now, this one becomes a little bit more tricky with just the equivalent ratios going side to side, because this is 100 and you can't multiply anything times 100 easily to get to 450. So this one is probably best if you do cross multiply it. So I'm going to do 100 times x, 100x equals 450 times 1 is 450. Then I have to get x by itself, so I'm going to divide by 100. These are opposite, so they cancel. And so I'm left with x equals 4.5. Now this is a calculator unit, so you are welcome to use a calculator if you're having trouble with your calculations. So there's 4.5 meters and 450 centimeters. So this is always taking what you know and then comparing it to what you don't know and finding the missing piece. So let's look at the last ones that are here. The average person uses a 1:3 ketchup to mustard ratio on their burgers. If I put 9 teaspoons of ketchup on my burger, how much mustard should I put on? So they're giving us a ratio, which is 1:3. Ketchup to mustard. So I'm comparing ketchup to mustard. It's a 1 ketchup to 3 mustard ratio. I have to set it equal. And it says if I put 9 teaspoons of ketchup, well, it's ketchup, so I have to put 9 on the top. And I'm missing the mustard piece. This one you might be able to do with just the ratios, but I'm going to do it with the cross multiplying. So I'm going to do 1 times x is just x. 3 times 9 would be 27. So x equals 27, and it's 27 teaspoons of mustard. And that's your answer. Now, if you did the ratio form, you would just do 1 times 9 would be 9. So you do 3 times 9 on the bottom, which gets you to 27. Same answer. All right, the last one on this page, if a fish to hermit crab ratio in my house is 3:4, so that's our ratio, how many fish should I buy if I plan on buying 2 more hermit crabs? So I'm buying 2 more hermit crabs, and I have a fish to hermit crab ratio. So I'm comparing fish to hermit crab. Then the ratio is 3:4, 3 fish to every 4 hermit crabs. And she says she's buying 2 more hermit crabs. So I'm going to put 2 down here. And I need to figure out this top piece. So you could easily use the ratio. I'm going to use the butterfly with the proportions. So this is 4x. And then 3 times 2, which is 6. And then you can divide. Oh, wait. There's something else. Erase. This should be a 6. Because it's buying 2 more than she already has, and she has 4. So this is 6. My mistake. So it's still 4x. 4 times x is 4x. 3 times 6 is 18. Then you can divide by 4, and you're left with x equals 4.5 fish. It doesn't work so well with the ratios if you once I fixed that. My mistake. All right, so let's talk about metric and customary a little bit. Let's identify if the units of measurement are customary or if they're metric. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to do these first 4, and then you're going to do these other 4. So 5 ounces, ounces is customary. feet are customary, miles are customary, pounds are customary. You do the other 8. All right, so there's your answers for those. The big T stands for tablespoons. That's a customary measurement. And the KL stands for kiloliters. FLOZ, I call them the flues. They're the fluid ounces. Those are customary as well. So what is ballpark measurement? They are quick conversions between customary and metric. And that's why they're called ballpark, because they're approximately the answer. They're not exact. So if we look at the first example, Paige ran a 5-kilometer race. What would be the closest distance she ran in miles? So we're comparing kilometers to miles. Kilometers to miles. Now we're going to look back on that conversion sheet to figure out what is the comparison between kilometers and miles. And this is on your cover. So it's 1.5 kilometers is 1 mile. So then we can come back here, and I recommend ripping out that page so you can keep it with you. 1.5 kilometers over 1 mile. And in the problem, they're giving us 5 kilometers. Well, 5 has to go on the top with the kilometers where I labeled it. X goes here. I recommend doing the butterfly method for this one, where you're doing the proportions. So 1.5 is times X is 1.5X. 1 times 5 is going to be 5. And then divide to get the piece away from the X. These are opposite, so they cancel, and so I'm going to be left with X equals 3.3 repeating meters, or miles, I'm sorry. It should be MI. So you can write 3.3 repeating. So it's the same process that we were going through on the other page, but you're using that conversions sheet from your cover of your notes pages. So let's do another one together. So in this one, we're comparing inches to centimeters. If you don't know the conversion between inches and centimeters, go back to your conversions page. Inches to centimeters is 1 inch to 2.5 centimeters. So it's 1 inch, because inches are on the top, to 2.5 centimeters. And I'm going to set it equal to what I know in the problem, which is 2 inches. So inches are on the top. I'm going to put the 2 on the top. X goes here. Cross multiply. 1 times X is X. 2.5 times 2 will get you 5. And that's just the answer. 5 centimeters, because X is just plain. There's nothing to solve for X. Number 2, I'm comparing liters to quarts. Go back to your conversions paper. What do you know? What do you know about liters and quarts? Well, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. So I'm going to come back here. It's a 1-to-1 ratio, and I'm given 4 liters in the problem. I don't know how many quarts. This one's an easy one. You could just do with the ratios. 1 times 4 is 4. 1 times 4 is going to be 4, so X equals 4 for this one. You could also cross multiply, but you don't need to. Okay, what I would like for you to do is to do 3, 4, 5, and 6 on your own. And here are your answers for those problems.